Hello guys, welcome back to Outdated Gamers and welcome back to the very first video of 2015. I hope you guys did have an awesome Christmas holiday seasons with a lot of gaming, with friends and families and those really lovely stuff. And today I decided to talk about one of the most deserved video game series that I could personally think of, and that is Yakuza series. And the reason behind it's because of this really big announcement in the PlayStation Experience event, which was held in Las Vegas, and that announcement was Yakuza 5 in the West, finally. And no better time to actually give a brief introduction to the series to the people that actually never played or don't really know anything about this, and show you two guys what kind of experience you can have with these games. Yakuza series, also known in Japan as Ryuga Gotoko, which roughly translates to like a dragon, are a series made by Sega that started on PlayStation 2 and kept their legacy on Sony consoles like the PSP, the PlayStation 3 and more recently on the PlayStation 4 as well. Explaining Yakuza games could be an art task, especially considering how much genre of games you could forge into a single Yakuza game. You have dating, combat, leveling up, so many things combined together, which makes this whole experience really unique and hard to describe as well. But I'd say Yakuza, it's a lovely combination between a brawler with an exploration vertance, almost like a hybrid RPG game. Bring some mini-games, side quests to the mix, and there you have it, a brief description of Yakuza in a nutshell. Some people compare Yakuza games as the successor to the Shenmue series, and I kinda understand that statement, but I don't fully agree with it, because Shenmue has a really different vibe, a more realistic vibe, when Yakuza brings a more cinematographic approach to the series. Just an example here, Shenmue, you have actually to work to earn money to pay your rent in the motel that you are living. In Yakuza, basically, you don't really need money to, and the thing is, if you really want money, you can do side quests and things like that. It's really much more easier to earn money than Shenmue, because they took a more video game form approach in this game. Another thing that Yakuza deals really differently from any other games are sequels. Instead of just giving new places to visit in towns, one thing it's common in any Yakuza games is the main city, Kamurocho, which is always present in any Yakuza title. Could be an easy way to maintain the low budget, yeah, sure, but every store, every place goes with a story that grows up on every sequel. Even though some Yakuza games have new location to explore, Kamurocho is always the town that has the more important main events, and Yakuza games overall share a similar experience, but they have always something new to add to the next sequel. As I hope everyone figure out, Yakuza games are games that have stories about Japanese gangs and clans, which go around the main protagonist, ex-Yakuza member named Kazumi Kiryu. Alongside him, there's a really likable character. Some join Kiryu on this journey later on the story, or even become playable, others don't, but all the characters are still really relevant to the plot, and always with really interesting personalities that make the whole stories of the games one of the biggest selling points of Yakuza games. But even though story is one of the biggest good aspects of Yakuza games, These games are about Japanese culture and shows how big the love the developers have for this city. They reproduce really well the life of Japan in the city, even though it's not a faithful representation. Seriously, it doesn't need to. The feeling, the vibe is there, and almost you're going to feel like a tourist exploring the main city and go to house bars, going to karaoke, restaurants. The game gives you plenty of content to enjoy besides the whole story, and to be honest, you are losing a lot of gameplay content if you just rush through the main story. Yakuza has 4 main games and 1 spin-off release in the West, with Yakuza 5 coming in 2015, but in Japan the story is different. They already have 5 Yakuza main games released and 5 spin-off series as well, with Yakuza 0 coming in 2015 for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. So as you can see, there's still plenty games to play in the West, but there's much more titles for Japanese speakers to enjoy. And you ask, why the heck, a lot of games that they don't really come to the West? And the simple answer to that is sales. Sega never had sales to justify bring more Yakuza games to the West, and with 5 titles in the market, it's not like they didn't try it, just the audience was too small for it. And even though Yakuza 5 is coming, be aware this is a Sony money that was involved to bring this game to the West, not Sega's money. With all this talking about Yakuza series, you must be wondering, so what game I should really start playing? One thing I gotta say, Yakuza games are not just normal sequels, they are games that evolves within the next sequel. So if you play the third one, you feel like Yakuza 2 or 1 are big step backwards in terms of game mechanics, and overall the game experience could be less enjoyable because you already played the third one, and these games are always introducing new stuff on the next sequel. So I'd say start from the very first one. But if you don't happen to have a PlayStation 2 to play Yakuza 1 and 2, there's 2 options available. The first one is to watch the recap of the story that was included in 3 and 4. They are not the best recaps, but they do the job. Or buying the HD versions of Yakuza 1 and 2, but there's one thing that you must be aware. These versions are only in Japanese, they only have Japanese text, so if you don't happen to know Japanese, it could be less enjoyable as well if you don't really understand that. But if you are one of those lucky hipsters that know Japanese, go for it, because this version, it's a much more improved version from the PlayStation 2 version, so it's a really awesome way to play Yakuza 1 and 2 if you can. With this being said, let's talk about the games itself. So as I said previously, the Yakuza games have the same core experience, so I'm not going to give a deep thing about what you can do in every title, but I'm going to give overview of every title, what I like it about it, and or rather you should or should not play it, and that's it. So the first Yakuza game was released in 2005 in Japan and 2006 in the West for the PlayStation 2. This was the only Yakuza game that actually have English voice acting, which I personally didn't really like it. And the other Yakuza games have Japanese audio with English subtitles, so this could be a turn off for people, especially for people who played the newer entries. And overall the combat feels a little bit clunky, and the most annoying thing about the first one is definitely the loadings, because the game has some really rough loadings. But if you can't get past to that, you should really play this game, because the story, it's definitely an interesting one, even though it's a little bit predictable on the side. Adds really likable characters, and I always recommend people playing this over the recap, because there are some details that recap actually fails to show that you can only experience with the game itself. The second Yakuza, it's a major improvement from the very first title. Loadings are way shorter than the first one and makes the whole experience much more enjoyable. The combat feels way lighter and more satisfying as well. feels much more easier to avoid attacks now, and besides the main city Kamurocho, the game now has new places to visit such as Santamburi, and these games doubled content from the very first game. A lot of more side quests to do, a lot of collectibles as well, and personally one of the best stories in Yakuza series has to be Yakuza 2, just simply because feels way less predictable, a little bit more on the adult side, which I really like it, and it makes a little bit more sense than the first one. I'd really recommend this one try for yourselves because it's really worth it over the recap that it's included on Yakuza 3. Not forgetting, this is the first title that actually included Japanese voice acting, and I gotta say this game it's vastly improved from the very first title. With Yakuza 2 being released in 2007 in Japan and 2008 in the West, was already time out to move on to the next gen. In 2009 was released in Japan Ryuga Goto 3 for the PlayStation 3, and later on Yakuza 3 saw the day in the West. And I gotta say, personally I don't really care about graphics. I was never a big factor in video games for me. But Yakuza series saw one of the biggest jumps in the series with the next gen console, PlayStation 3. I certainly felt like the PlayStation 3 hardware was much more capable of doing things that PlayStation 2 couldn't do it, and I always felt like in terms of artistics, they could do much more with the PlayStation 3. For instance, you have now full control of the camera perspective, no more fixed camera angles, loadings are vastly improved as well, and combats almost happen in real time, and the detail they put in Kamurocho, it's really unbelievable. For me personally, it was one of the biggest selling points of this game. Being able to explore the same old town with much more improved visuals was fantastic. They gave so much life to Kamurocho, and the facial experience of the actors feel much more human. This is something that Yakuza always did. They never tried to make recreations of anime characters. They always tried to portray Asian people, and this all new engine helps to capture the feeling of a Japanese movie. There's of course new side missions to do and new arcade games to enjoy as well, and as well a new location to explore, Okinawa. And this location, I might say, has a different feeling into it. It's a much more quiet town with a really beautiful beach that kinda reminds me other Sega games like Sonic Adventure. And this is something you will notice on Yakuza games. They really scream that Sega vibe every damn time you play it. And the last title released in the West was Yakuza 4, and this one saw big changes as well. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have a new town to explore, but instead they give you 3 new main characters to play in this series, and they play really different in terms of fighting mechanics, which gives the game a big variety. And this was something that I was kinda get tired of, was always playing with Kiryu, and Yakuza 4 kinda fixed that urge. And besides that, now each side quests are different for each character, and different characters can only access to different specific areas. So like I said previously, the town is the same, but there's new places to go, and this is the all-main series available in the West. In Japan, it's a whole different story. There's already available Yakuza 5 and will be released in this year Ryuga Goto 0, which has a story that happens before the first Yakuza game. But now talking about the non-canon Yakuza titles, there's a lot of them. None of them are really related to the Yakuza main story, but they share characters in some places as well, so it's always a good idea to play the main games first before dive into those. In the West we got Yakuza Dead Souls, and this is the only non-canon side game that we have on the Yakuza series. This one has a zombie-themed Yakuza game where Japan is overrun by zombies. I personally never played this title, I don't even own it, so I've heard, the shooting mechanics were a little bit weird, but I can't personally talk for myself because I don't ever played this game before. On Japan's side, there's quite a number of spin-offs as well. First, we got an, I'm sorry guys for my Japanese, Ryuga Gotoko Kenzan and Ryuga Gotoko Inchin, and those are both in the past with this samurai setting. And I don't know much about these titles, since I don't know Japanese, but they sure look interesting, and this is one of the titles I'm really looking for if they got translated into English. And the most curious thing, even the PSP got exclusive Yakuza games that never was released in the West. These two games are Ryugagoto Chincho and Kiryu Ryugagoto Ashura N, and they are both really different from Yakuza in terms of gameplay. But they share the same universe. In fact, this game was developed by the same guys who made Def Jam games, and that explains why the fight mechanics are really super similar. So guys, this was the Japanese side of Yakuza games. I hope I made you motivated to play this series, and that was actually the main reason I wanted you guys to actually watch my video. It's to make you play Yakuza, and you know, I couldn't really cover everything that Yakuza has to offer because there's so many things to talk about, and I want you guys to experience by yourselves. I don't want you guys to just hear on the internet. You know, I can't do that. It's much more cool if you actually find by yourself. You could do those things. So if you have any question, anything about Yakuza series, just comment below, or you just want to give your opinion on Yakuza series. For me personally, this is one of my favorite series of all time, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. See you next time.